Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host. And we've got another great show for you this evening. Back by popular demand, as they say, is Mario Woods. Last time he was on, it was a pre-recorded show. And this time you'll have an opportunity, if you're watching live, to ask a question or two. And just remember when you're doing that in chat, that you want to do all caps so I catch the question. And if it fits and I can use it, or I can go back to it at a later time and use it in another part of the conversation, I'll be glad to do that for you. I want to thank everyone that supports the show, and anyone can do that. All you have to do is go to podcastufo.com and the support page. And there are people that support the show in so many other ways, and I want to thank them as well. First of all, Charles Lear, who does the blogs and audio blogs. I can't thank him enough. This week, a trucker reports a harrowing UFO encounter. That's the name of the blog. And that was back in 1973, and it's very interesting. Charles is the author of The Flying Saucer Investigators, a great book. I hope you get that. The link to that is on the page as well. And now I'm putting them in his blogs that he does. We have Grant Cameron next week coming up. And I want to thank a few people. Donna, my producer, for all that she does. Thank you very much. Brock is helping out over on Facebook. Thank you very much for all that you do, Brock. He also helps me by sending me interesting things and through emails. And so does Phil, longtime listener and friend and supporter. Palmer, thank you, Palmer. He sends me some very interesting stuff. I'm getting a lot of, I think it's Eyes on Cinema. A lot of people are sending me links to that. There are some fascinating YouTube videos that have come up. I'm not really sure where they're coming from, but they're really great. So, and I've tried to get the person that is running that channel on this show, but I have not heard back from him. But anyway, I think I've talked enough. That's about me. And again, remember when you're in chat and you want to post a question, please use all caps so I catch them. And I'm bringing them in now. Mario, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martin. Nice to be here and with you again.
Yes. I had a lot of people really excited about you coming back on. So, and I'm glad you're here. And there, we'll talk about, I know this is, one type of situation that happened to you, but it's fascinating. And a lot of people may have not caught the first show. So I do want to go over the whole situation at November 5. Is that the name of the where the encounter happened?
Yes, that was the missile site launch facility. Yes,
the launch facility is called November 5.
Correct.
And that's at Ellsworth. Is that right? Ellsworth.
Well, Ellsworth is the main support base, and
I see.
We were at November 1 launch control facility where you live for 3 days at a time, then you're off for 3 days. So we simply responded to an alarm. And I can go into that if you'd like. But yeah, November 5 was the affected launch facility, Minuteman missile site. And we arrived there, maybe 1:45 or 1 a.m. On November cold night. And everything started from that point.
Yeah. And we'll get right into that and everything. But first of all, I wanted to tell you, last time you were on, you mentioned about a childhood UFO sighting. And your sighting that you had, I think you said it was back in 1961 or something like that at the schoolyard.
With my sister and my mother, yes.
Yeah, your sighting was very much like a person in the UFO field had a very similar sighting. His name is Peter Robbins. He talks about 3 silver discs him and his sister saw. And it just sounded so similar in formation, the way they were flying and all that. I mentioned it to him and he listened to your podcast, and yeah, he thought there was some similarities in the two. And it could have been right around the same time.
Really?
And yeah, right around the same time. Yeah. And he's, where were you at the time? This is what I can't remember.
Port Arthur, Texas.
Oh, you were in Texas. Okay.
Port Arthur, my father shipped in and out of Port Arthur. Yes.
I believe he was right in New York City or right near there. I believe so. But yeah, I mean, distance doesn't matter to those guys, right?
Yeah.
And this is a schoolyard situation. Why don't you, just for the person that hasn't heard that, why don't you kind of go over what exactly happened? You were Were you actually in the car with your
Yes. Yeah.
mother?
My mother was taking me to schools. Matter of fact, I was 5 or 6 years old. I 6 years old. I was born in 55. And anyway, I was sitting in the front seat. 6-year-olds were allowed to do that back then. And we were just 2 blocks from the school anyway. But the school was a facility where you kindergarten to 12th grade. It was a one building school. And they had the street directly in front of it, fenced off. And then the block across the street from the school was a playground. And I don't know the exact number of students there. Never did. It was a lot of kids and young teenagers there, because I said it went to 12th grade. And we were probably 5th or 6th in line that I can remember, looking at the cars in front of me, that I can think back that far and see them. I always try to take a picture of something that's important in my mind. I don't know how I can do that, but I can always go back to that for some reason. But my mother actually saw them first. She was driving, and she said, Anthony, my middle name, she goes, look at those flying saucers. And my sister was in the back seat and I was in the front seat. And I just went, where? And she was pointing to them, and they were to her left. And there was a church on the left. And it was directly next, side by side, to the school. It's no longer there, but it was a really pretty brick church at the time. And I got under the window and I just looked at it, like looking out of the top of the window underneath the rear view visor there, rear view mirror, and I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. And everything just went quiet, and everybody was looking at them. All the cars in front of us, and people were hanging out out of the would have been the western windows of the school, looking up and pointing, and all the kids on the playground. I just did a quick scan at 6 years old when I saw all this, because I couldn't believe it was happening. But it was the most normal thing to happen. There was not any fear or anything, but it was like, hey, they're supposed to be here. They're supposed to be here. And they probably sat there for a minute or two, maybe 3 minutes. I'm really not sure, but enough to get a really good look at them. And my sister said, I'm scared. I'm scared, Anthony, my middle name. And I didn't even answer. I just kept looking. And then all of a sudden, just as they were there, they went straight up completely, almost like to punch a hole in the sky, together at the same time. There was not 1, 2, 3. It was all 3 at one time, just flew straight up. I mean, in a blast of a second, they were just out of view, out of the atmosphere, I guess.
Now, if I remember right, nobody talked about it really that much?
No, everybody just went back to playing like nothing had happened. It was as if nothing happened. It was just the craziest thing, And when I went back, I was working for a shipping company out of Norway. And when I was back there in 2008, and I was in Port Arthur. So I went right by my school. Matter of fact, I picked up a couple of rocks I have today from the playground that's still there. And of course, the school's been rebuilt and the church is gone. But I sat on that corner for a moment because it meant something to me at a point in time, I guess. And just reflected, what was that, and how cool that was to have witnessed that. But yeah, it was really quite extraordinary to see that.
So throughout your life, you must have wondered what this whole thing is about.
Always.
Yeah.
My father used to, he was a seaman, so he was the chief engineer for Texaco, and we would fish together, and he would sometimes talk of lights under the sea, and I never really said too much about him. And he said, yeah, there are things under the sea that move extremely fast, 50 times faster than our ships, and most vessels coming up the Gulf Stream, surrounding Florida, they're running 30 knots. They pick up the Gulf Stream and they're flying. He said these things just blow by them, or he'd even talked about things coming up and out of the sea, and the whole crew would see it, a crew of 29 or 30 men.
Boy, would it be something to talk to someone that actually witnessed those?
Absolutely. Yeah. When I worked for that shipping company, I used to always ask the captains of my vessels. They were all Filipino. We had 4 vessels that were had Latvians on board, and But anything coming out of Mobile, Alabama, or Panama City, I would always ask the captains, "Hey, anything weird going on out there?" Because I have two of my dad's cousins went down on the Marine Suffolk Queen. I think that was in '63, if I'm not mistaken. And my dad got off of that vessel in Port Arthur, and when she sailed, she sunk. That was the last of that. That was the Marine Suffolk Queen. That was in Charles Berlitz's book, also, The Bermuda Triangle.
Oh, wow. So what did he think about your sighting that you had at the schoolyard?
I don't really know if he ever knew or
remember?
my mother ever told him. My father was always at sea, man. I mean, I was like the man of the house, always. Even from a young age. I mean, I took care of my mom, my sister, and then my two baby brothers,
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And so time goes by and you enlist, and that was like the only encounter you had until the Air Force encounter, right?
Yeah, I had seen a few things in the atmosphere, like over in Tampa and one time over at in Cocoa Beach, but it wasn't anything definitive. It wasn't any kind of craft that I could identify or anything like that. I may have just been an aircraft, from the Air Force or special project. I don't know. That was an early time. So
Yeah.
no, not until South Dakota did I really see something that changed my life forever.
Now, since you have been on when you were on the last time, I know that someone contacted you that through my podcast that you were in. I don't know if you in Ellsworth at the same time, or where were you stationed together?
Oh, that was Osan Air Base.
Oh,
Yeah.
And but anyway, has there been any other like new developments in any type of way other than her getting in touch with you since we've last talked?
Yeah, it's funny you should ask that because I did something last night with another moderator, and anyway, I several people contacted me because I put my email out there, and I had told you that in my debriefing in Colonel Sprecher's office at Ellsworth the day following the occurrence, but or the day of, it was just really late in the afternoon by that time, but Richard Doty was at my debriefing, and he was a young trainee at the time. And I put out several times on several different shows that I would like to speak with him because, getting that verification, is important, that you get somebody that says, yep, I remember this guy. I remember this guy. I remember what we did and what we talked about, because he was like one of 5 or 6 people that were there, but he was a young trainee at the time. I do know that for a fact. So as of today, he was given my number and my email and hope that he'll call me. I just want to discuss it with him. I'm going to say, hey, you remember me? Because I remember you. I remember your face, I mean, I really do. I've been saying it all along. I'd like to talk to him.
Now I heard through the grapevine that he confirmed that he was there.
I don't know. I
okay.
haven't, I don't know of that. I haven't heard anything or seen anything concerning that, but I would really like to speak with him.
Yeah. So why don't we get into it? Because this is
sure.
This is one of the most amazing stories, and I know I heard it once, and a lot of our listeners perhaps heard it when you were on last year. But let's get into that night that this happened. And what was the date again on that?
It was in November. It was just before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And it was in 1977, and a blizzard had taken place in late October. And the temperature in South Dakota gets extremely cold, especially out on the prairies. Now, in Rapid City, it's usually a few degrees different because that's the banana belt of the Black Hills. And as winds come from the northwest, the Black Hills insulate Rapid City somewhat. But yeah, on the prairies, it's extremely cold. And November 1, we were located north of Sturgis and east of the Wyoming state line. And I'd say probably 40 miles away to the Wyoming state line. But the next town north of us is Belfouche. I think that's about 29 miles away from us. What you see there is Newell Lake Reservoir Dam.
Yeah, that's where you end up. And well, I'm sorry, I saw on the map and I just pulled it up, but And this was from the last time they were on. Does this have any significance?
That's November 5 missile site from
Oh,
Google
that's the
Earth.
November 5
Yeah.
missile site. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So, but anyway, go ahead and continue. Sorry for that.
Well, do you want me to start when it happened, or when I first signaled them, or how? Or
I think when you first, I remember you went outside to smoke a cigarette
I did.
and you saw a light at a distance, or you thought it was a light, or you didn't know what it was. And then I remember you signaled the big cans, the whatever they call those floodlight cans.
Yeah.
And so go ahead and let's talk about that whole thing.
It was about 9:30 at night, and I stepped outside, and it was extremely cold. I think the temperature was between 9 and 13 degrees,
Ugh.
and I just walked out to stretch my legs, because you only have 3 channels there to watch TV or read a book or play a board game or something, or something like that. But anyway, I stepped out just to take a break, and I smoked a cigarette. I did that then. And I see this object to the east, direct east of us, or to our location, to the Launch Control Facility location, which is November 1. And it was about a 30-degree angle in the sky. And I thought it was really strange, because of the luminosity, the brightness, and the color of the light just was unfamiliar to me. And, you see a searchlight from a helicopter or something like that today. This was just different. You see aircraft lights near a runway or something. This was just different than that. And it's very difficult to explain how different it is, but it gets your attention. And anyway, as I watched it, the intensity of it was just really baffling. And I went, well, is that a helicopter? Is that B-52 bombers? Because Ellsworth supported a strategic wing of ready alert bombers, B-52s at the time. And so just for fun, and that's the only way I can put it, after watching it 4 or 5 minutes, literally, I just walked inside, and my buddy Bill Holloman was on the phone talking to his wife back in Rapid City. And I said, Bill, there's something out here in the atmosphere, in the air. I said, I don't know what it is. I said, it's a real bright light. I said, I don't know if it's helicopters or any word from anybody or anything. And he just waved me off. And I just thought, well, I'm going to flip the facility lights at it. And there's 12 to 14 of those 2-foot cans, which are security perimeter lights. And we have an 8 or 10-foot fence around the entire area. And they are just what they say they are. They're security perimeter lights to light up everything outside, So I just walked up to one rocker switch, and I just flipped it off and on 3 or 4 times, just blip, 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 blip. Walked back outside, looked at this object just sitting there, and all of a sudden it just flipped off and flipped on, flipped off and flipped back on. And I went, wow, that worked, I just kind of laughed. It's funny, I got a helicopter passing overhead right now, but anyway, so I thought, well, that's interesting. So I walked back inside again, and I didn't say anything to Bill Holloman, but I did say something to Michael Johnson. And I said, Michael, this guy is working vacation relief, so I really don't know him. It was our first time we ever worked together. And he replaced my partner who was going back to the Carolinas to get married. And normally I would be the team leader, but he outranked me by 2 months. Real nice guy, Michael Johnson. Been trying to find him for years now, but with no luck. But so anyway, I said, you got to see this, man. I just flipped the lights at this thing out here, and it flipped the lights back at me. Or it went off and went back on like I flipped the lights at it. And he just kind of looked at me kind of strange, And, you got to mind, you're in the middle of a prairie. There is nothing but buffalo running out there. There's no trees. The state tree is a Malt Bell telephone pole. That's what we always used to have a joke about that. And anyway, so I walked back outside, and it's still there. He came out a few minutes later, and I said, watch this thing, So it didn't do anything. I went back in and flipped the lights on. This went on 3 times. And it did flip the lights back off and back on. And the last time it did it, it moved further north with it off. And prior to that, it just seemed as if it was staying in the same place. I thought it was coming towards us. It didn't get bigger or anything like that. It just stayed the same. But when it went off the last time, and prior to it coming back on, it had moved more north, but yet kind of west too, kind of like at an angle, like a northwest trajectory. And when it came back on, I saw it. And I went, wow, well, he had walked back inside because he just didn't think, whatever, he didn't think anything about it. And I'd say it was probably right around 9:45, 10 till 10, something like that. I try to keep the time straight. But so it went off and I didn't see it again. And there, I remember saying to myself, I said, I guess this show's over. And I walked back inside, turning around and looking again over my shoulder, back in the front door of the LCF, and nothing. So anyway, we started doing something and the TV went off, or the channels end at midnight. So you get those weird warble things or whatever, on the screen. You just turn the TV off because there's no more programming. And that antenna is still standing. I helped erect that antenna, still in the back of the building, man. I couldn't believe it. But anyway, I guess it was right after, it was about 12:30 or so. And the flight security controller's office, he's the one that dispatches us, but yet there's in a configuration on a launch control facility, you have 6 security police officers, 3 of which are on duty at all times. 1 flight security controller, he is the one that tells us where we're going, what we're doing. Kind of like our guy in charge for us, for security police. And then we answer to the launch control capsule members, which captain and a lieutenant, commander and an assistant underground. And anyway, they're monitoring all the missiles underground, 60, 75 feet, however deep. We have 1 facility manager, and then you have a site cook also. And in reserve, you have 3 security officers, 1 flight security controller, 2 response officers, or as we were. And then you have 2 additional officers that are the launch control relief officers. So you have 4 officers, 6 cops, facility manager, and a site cook on a site at one time, all the time, 24 hours, 7 days a week. So anyway, the alarm goes off on this phone, and as that phone rings, it's one of those direct alert phones that have that really strange sound, like that. It rings until you pick it up. So Bill Holloman picks the phone up, and he's listening to what the commander is telling him. I hear, sit for November 5. He says 10-4 that, we'll do this, do that. We followed our normal procedures, our code tables, our weapons and everything. Our vehicle was sitting directly outside the door, an F-154 pickup truck, which we have our ditty bags ready and everything ready to go, our flight pants, our parkas and all that stuff ready to go. Get in everything. And once we got our safety briefing from downstairs, which Michael Johnson obtained that, Wing Security Control chimes in, and now they're back at the main support base at Ellsworth. They're like the overseeing security force for everybody. They do many things, whether it be on the aircraft alert pad back at base, or whether we have an incident out in the field. They're like the central controlling office that looks at everything. So anyway, we get in our vehicle, and we've got about a 15-minute travel time to November 1. And as we depart the site, go out the end of the road, take a left, these are all clay roads now. They go all the way to Wyoming or all the way to Montana on a clay road. They're better than most interstate highways.
Are they plowed though?
Excuse me?
Are they plowed?
Yeah.
They're plowed.
They normally are. And also we have a front end loader on the facility. If they ever we got snowed in a few times, and we used our front end loader to plow all the way out to Highway 79. So, but yes, sir, that's true. But the state keeps really, really good. Everything's really good. Power's always on because they built underground all those years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, even in Rapid City, you never lose power. But so anyway, we proceeded onward, and the time now was probably 12:35, 12:40. We had a 15-minute travel time, and as we took that left and went on to a clay road directly in front of November 1, goes to the next intersection, 4-way intersection, dirt road, took another left to go to Highway 79. It's about 4.5 miles up to Highway 79. And while you're traveling up to Highway 79, The road beds normally built up higher, so moisture and snow and water and ice will flow off of them before they even salt them or what have you. So as we were going up that hill, I'm in the passenger side, and this is important. I looked over to the 4 o'clock position. Now, this is just flat prairie land. You got, I mean, you can see a long way out there. And I saw this faint glow at about my 4 o'clock position over my right shoulder, looking out the window of this F-154 pickup truck. And I was like, man, I said, Michael, do you see that? Well, he didn't even really look, and he just kind of said, whatever. As we pulled up on the Highway 79, so now that 4 o'clock position changed to about a 2 o'clock, maybe 1:30 position as the clock would look in front of you. And we're going down the hill, downhill toward Newell. And you could see a brighter glow now because we were up on like a top of a plateau on that road. And as we traversed toward Newell, the road goes back downhill again. So we lost that glow, but I kept saying, I said, you see that? I said, I'm telling you, that's that object. He didn't even know what to say. He just said, whatever. I don't think so, or whatever. So the town of Newell at that time had a population of 234, I believe. And it's only like 650 or 674 today. I was just out there last year.
Oh, it tripled.
Yeah.
Or doubled. Yeah, or tripled.
There.
Yeah.
Super nice people. And all of them are great cooks, but we stopped at some really nice places there. But as there's a stop sign we came to that's Ormond Road, and it goes to the right. And that's where November 5 is off of. There's one stop sign and there's one stoplight in Newell, South Dakota. And the stoplight is straight ahead about a mile. And we stopped at the stop sign, still there today, same stop sign. Turn right on the Ormond Road. It goes out about 1.5 miles and it drops from pavement back off to clay. And when it did that, the road doglegs to the left. There's an actual golf course out there today that's on the left side of the road at Ormond Road. You can look it up on Google Maps. And when we turn that corner to the left, there was an object. There was an object sitting there, and it was, and I'm going to tell you this, and I've used this as a description because, I mean, people can relate to it. It was the size of a super Walmart building, and it was sitting about 10 foot in the air directly on top of November 5. No noise, no sound, no leading edges, no hard edges, no thrust, no wings, no cockpit, nothing but a huge plasma sphere, a craft of some type that I can't even explain it. It looked like the sun sitting there. Yes. In that picture where our vehicle is pulled up at a 45-degree angle, there's a cattle gate just beyond that. And from beyond that cattle gate to the site, it's only about 20 yards. The diameter of this is really not true because the diameter of that object seen by me was literally over this almost maybe 20 yards away from, how should I explain this? The circumference was so large that where our vehicle sat, it wasn't far to where the edge of the craft was. That's really not a good way to say it either. The diameter was huge. And it was as if it was almost not fire, but electrical plasma light. I've seen welding and I've seen plasma burning, and that's what it reminds me of. But the atmosphere was just almost electric or ionized. And in that thought, my partner, he just literally froze on that steering wheel. And I remember seeing there was like a glow on the left-hand side of him that I've never seen anybody lit up like that in any way. And so fast this came at me was that the atmosphere in that truck was as if someone just sucked it out. It was as if the light was so bright, you could close your eyes and see through your eyelids, but couldn't breathe. And I honestly felt in that parka and those flak pants and everything I had on me that I felt as if I was about to burn up, but yet I felt as if I was being pulled up in the back of that seat. Now, these weren't cab plus vehicles. These were single cab F-154 pickup trucks with Western mirrors. And something sparked in my mind, and I don't know why this happened. I'm shaking like a damn leaf right now, but I rolled the window down, and I had my mag light, and a D-cell mag light. You know, they give no light compared to what lights do today. And I had a mitten on my left hand, and my right hand was bare. And I had my mag light in it, and I reached up and I pulled myself up on that Western mirror, which was big stainless steel mirrors, and I pulled myself up on the windowsill. Why would I do that? I was a 210-pound man, 6'2", but I was scared to get out of that truck with a weapon or not. I mean, nothing that you can think of can you use or even think of employing at a time like that. And I pulled myself up on that seat. Apologize. I pulled myself up on that seat, up on that windowsill from that seat. And I took my mag light, and I held on to the blue bubble on top of the vehicle, and I flashed this little mag light, a D-cell mag light, at this object. In no sequential order. I just flashed it like, okay, it's me. That's what I had to say. And as soon as I did that, the atmosphere came back.
Huh.
And when that happened, I said, okay. And I remember saying something else too. When I slid back down on that seat, I put my weapon between my leg, and I told Michael Johnson, I said, it'll be okay. I said, it'll be okay. That's what I said. And then everything just kind of tunnel visioned. And I just went out. And the next thing I know, when I'm going to tell you this, but before I went out, you sitting there thinking in a situation like this, what next?
Mm-hmm.
What next? And I looked to my right, not wanting to, in a tunnel in a tunnel vision type feeling or something. And I saw figures to my right. And I was so afraid because there was only a small, thin 1/8-inch window glass between me and whatever was out there.
Is it this that you did a drawing of?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That wand in that waist belt or whatever that is right there, that thing scared me literally to death. But the one behind actually there's 4 of them. There's 3 of those little guys, but the one that was behind them, the tall one, he had something on his chest that protruded out of the top of his chest under his so-called chin. That's a later drawing. That's not as good as the original ones.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, I know this is yeah.
But
I know this is hard for you to talk because when we talked before, even offline, I know it gets you emotional to talk about this. This was a major thing in your life.
Yeah.
And, so I understand that. And
these are not creatures.
Yeah.
These beings are not creatures. These are beings, man. These beings, they exist. They've been here, and they've been here a long time, and they've been coming here and doing anything whatever they want to do, can't be stopped. I don't even know if they can be understood. The technology is just that our knowledge is just that much different. But to complete what happened after that, I went black.
Yeah. Before we move on, I just want to ask you this: if you can try to describe the sphere, did it seem like it was perfectly round, or or do you think this thing was sideways like a disc? Any ideas at all? No.
It was round as a baseball, round as a softball,
completely
round.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I saw to the east on November 1. But I didn't know the size of it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if the plasma is a way in which its shape is kept uh, from being seen. I don't know. I don't know what's in the middle of it, but I only know that it looked as if it was literally on fire, but yet controlled fire, if that makes sense.
Wow. So then everything went black for you.
Yes, sir. It was as if somebody just turned me off, and then literally somebody flipped a switch. I guess I don't know how else to describe it. Michael
And
Johnson.
at that time, how far away would you say the beings were guessing?
20 foot and approaching me.
Wow. So they were fairly close.
Yes.
So you were able to get a good look at him, and your partner in the truck, he's frozen. He's not even looking, right?
No, not that I could see. I mean, at that particular point, the last I saw of him was when I told. Really, the last time I focused on him was when I told him it'd be okay. After I used the mag light, and I sat back down in the seat, and I put my weapon between my legs. The next thing that I know is I woke up and everything is pitch black. Pitch black, nothing running, just pitch black. And I was looking around and I said, "Where are we?" I said, "Michael, what are you doing? What are we doing?" No answer. No answer at all. I activated my mag light. It worked. I said, "Man, what are we doing? Where are we?" Because we weren't where we were. And I popped the door open. And when I did, I put I had bunny boots on, which are inflatable cold weather boots that protect your feet. And I stepped out in mud. Now, it had been cold, well below zero for probably 10 days, 8 or 10 days. And most of the ground elsewhere was frozen. When you walked on it, it all crunched, So I couldn't figure out why I was standing in mud. And of course, that mud is not mud, it's clay. It's really not mud, but it's clay. And I stepped out with one leg and I looked to my right and there's a white wall. Not a wall that's a 90 degrees straight up from the ground, straight up to your side, but at an angle. And as far south as I could, that would be north and south. So as far north as I could see, it continued. And as far south as I could see, it continued. Not knowing where we were. And as I was in that mode of thinking, all of a sudden the radio came to life. And it said, WSC to November 1, what's your location? And I turned to Michael Johnson, who's still frozen on that steering wheel. Literally, he is just like that, stuck on a light blue plastic steering wheel on that F-150 Ford. I'll never forget that. His arms were flexed. He'd been hanging on that steering wheel like catatonic state, I guess. And his eyes were open. He was breathing, but he wasn't there. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know, but I talked to him, and I best I could. And I got on wing security control, and I said, "Is Senior Airman Woods?" I said, he asked my location. I said, "I don't know." He said, "I need you to do 1 minute security checks." And I said, "Yes, sir," because we're trying to triangulate your position. He didn't say anything about anything else. And I didn't know what to ask. So I did what they said. And as that's going on, I'm still trying to, say something to Michael Johnson to answer me hey, man, I'm shaking him. I'm pushing his head. Nothing. I mean, I really tried in every way, to, pull his hands off of the steering wheel. I mean, it would come, but I could tell it wasn't supposed to. And I just left him alone, thinking maybe he would unfreeze, I don't know. But all of a sudden it started getting light. And I hadn't even looked at my watch, and it was working, the little Timex watch. And 5 hours had passed, and the sun was coming up in the east. And on the south side of us, there's a tree. It looks like old Western movie hanging tree that's about a half a mile away. It's still there today, that tree. And we were on the backside, not knowing this, but I'll finish the other part of this first. But the first people to get to us was a security response team, backup alert team, and it was a Sergeant Garza. And he got out of the vehicle. He parked about 20 yards away. He got out of the vehicle and walked towards us. He had his weapon on. And I stepped out of the vehicle and I walked toward him. And he goes, "Stay right there, Mario. Stay right there." He said, "You okay?" I said, "I'm okay, but Michael Johnson's not." And none of us really knew Michael Johnson. As I said, he was working vacation relief. He was from another flight. He's normally on the 66 area down by the Badlands, but vacation relief, they send you anywhere they want, where there's a vacancy. So I said, "Man, what happened?" Because all I'm worried about is we didn't strike that site. We didn't perform what we were supposed to do on that facility. And I knew there was trouble from that because it was an important alarm.
Mm-hmm.
And that can't be left undone. Somebody had to go on that site. And he said, "I can't talk to you about that, Mario. We're just here to take you and him back to November control." I said, "Okay." I said, "I need some help moving him." I said, "He is frozen to the steering wheel." I said, "He won't talk or anything." I said, "He's breathing." And he didn't really know what to say when I told him that. But he helped me move him over, and I put him in the passenger seat, and I drove. We went back to November 1. Well, come to find out, we were on the backside of November Lake Reservoir Dam. And the other thing was the vehicle was pointing to the south, which would be the lower part of that screen where those two white dots of snow are. Now, that's a holding reserve down there in case that dam overflows. In the upper part of that dam, the slough is on the far end there at the very bottom. And that's where they release water when this thing is full. I don't know how deep it is. I don't think it's that deep. It's just a big reservoir, it's just a reservoir dam. But that's what the white wall was, and it was covered in snow. Didn't know that. We were down at the very center of it. Now, had Michael Johnson been okay and stepped out of that vehicle, this is the weird part about it. These are only two-wheel drive vehicles. There was no way to drive down in there and turn around and then face south, which is where we were facing, because there was really not a road where we were sitting on. That's why Sergeant Garza parked 20 yards away. He parked up at an area where you could access and do it safely. But had Michael Johnson stepped out of the vehicle on the driver's side, he'd have taken 2 steps and he'd have gone down about 30 feet into that little holding reservoir down there.
Wow.
And that was a big lake. I was just out there. I mean, it was sizable. I said, "Wow, I had no idea that it was that large."
You could have driven right in there by accident too.
Well, you couldn't turn around though. I mean, we were facing the only direction that you could travel in to get out of there. That's what I'm trying to say. There was no way to drive in there and turn around and come back out where we were located.
It's almost like you backed in.
I don't think we backed at all. There were no tracks, as far as I know, going in there. We were put there.
You think you were put there?
Yes.
Wow.
So we went to November 1 from that point and got back to the launch control facility, whereas there was a lot of people waiting on us when we got there. A flight chief, assistant flight chief. There was some other law enforcement personnel there. All the backup alert teams were there. The officers that were off duty now and were on duty while they dispatched us were talking to us, asking questions. And they didn't talk to us. They talked to me because they took Michael Johnson in a back room to see if they couldn't do something medically for him. And I don't know, flight chief or not the flight chief, but the assistant flight chief and the site manager kind of took care of him. Now, I don't know what medical stuff they did, or maybe some smelling salts or something, but he never talked again. He didn't ever speak again from the time we left November 1 that night up to Highway 79. When he said whatever was the last thing that he uttered before 6 o'clock the next morning, or whatever, the next morning to anybody if he did. So they separated us, and I was so talked out and trying to explain what I had seen. And there was a lot of communication going on back at Ellsworth to November Control. I remember that. And I wasn't privy to listen to a lot of it. I don't know. I was hoping maybe I heard something about radar or anything like that, but I didn't. And I just wanted to get away from everybody. And this was the strangest thing. I knew. I said, I got to go to the restroom. Didn't have to. I just wanted to. And I went in. There was 2 stalls there, and I went in there and I just sat down on a toilet and just trying to get my thoughts and just breathe, just think about what had happened and the void or something or whatever I felt. It's very difficult to explain when you can't account for time or something like that. But something tripped in me. I don't know what, but I felt all of a sudden lightheaded, and then I felt as if I thought I was dying. I started to leave my body, and I was going down through my body I knew I was going through my feet, if that makes any sense. Which I don't know anything about that, but I just felt as if I was going down through my body, and I was going to leave my body. And really, I'd almost, given up on the fact that there was no way I could stop it. And I just opened my eyes a little bit. I heard something, and I saw 4 furry legs, 4 furry paws on the floor in front of the stall door, which belonged to a German Shepherd drug dog. And then behind them was a set of Cochrane shiny spit polished boots, which was the law enforcement guy that I knew from Ellsworth. And I said, "Hey man, how you doing?" He goes, "Hey Mario, we're all right." And I said, "My ditty bag's out there." He said, "We already checked it. You're good. Are you all right?" And I said, "I don't know what I am, man." And I don't know who that was, but anyway, I said, "I'll be out in a minute." And I washed my face really good and just tried to gather myself. And when I went back out to the day room, Master Sergeant Gray told me we were going to proceed back to Ellsworth. We were relieved. And so we gathered up all of our stuff, which was in the day room. I don't even think I took it out of the vehicle, but somebody did and put it in the day room. And so I got in the vehicle with him, and Michael Johnson was taken by the assistant flight chief, and I think somebody else rode with him. And we were all taken back to the main base, which, was over an hour ride. So I got to talk, Sergeant Gray, he just asked me all kind of things, and I told him everything that I knew and everything that I saw. And he was an Alabama boy. I remember that. And he didn't even know what to think. He just, these supervisors, they go through a lot. They hear everything from everybody, all walks of life at all times. And I think this pretty much did him in. He was a big guy too. He's really a nice guy. And so he said, the commander wants to talk to you, Colonel Spraker, and that kind of thing. And I said, "Yes, sir." I expected all that. So he said, can you write a report? And I said, "Of course I can." So there was entries made on the security police blotter. I know that at the site at November 1, which was a security police blotters, all actions, everything that had taken place, on a facility, that's annotated. Even your social security numbers on those blotters. So I wish I could get hold of one of those blotters today, which would give me information to find Michael Johnson. Been looking for many, many years, and substantial monies have been spent in trying to find him with investigators. Nothing bad, just trying to locate him. All media platforms, social platforms, anything together we served, platform, anything I can do to find him. That's what I've been looking for him. But so we get back to the base and we go to the main SATAF building, which is a converted aircraft hangar from World War II. I guess they had bombers in there at one time, and that was our security police operations center, where law enforcement, security, central security control, and all the officers had offices. And OSI was there. There was a man in a suit, and my commander, I'm not sure if it's the assistant base commander or possibly the base commander. I can't remember. There were probably 7 people in that office when I went there. I was only introduced basically to Colonel Spraker, or just I made myself available to Colonel Sprakers, who I reported to. So I had to do that formally. And then he asked me to sit down, and he wanted me to be at ease to talk about what had happened. And I tried my best to explain it to him and everybody in the room. Now, there was a young OSI guy there named Richard Doty, who's been on several different things. And he was in training, I understand, in OSI. And I've been trying to make contact with him for a long time, too, because he was at my debrief. Not only was he there, but he also went over to the flight surgeon's office where I was later examined. But my debrief took about 3.5 to 4 hours. And within that time, I was asked every single question that they could come up with, and what I thought it was, what I saw, what I didn't see, so they said, or how I felt about what I saw. And Michael Johnson, how well did I know him? Did I know what I knew about him? I mean, they really were diving deep into, how much I knew about Michael Johnson, which was nothing, literally nothing. I mean, we had met at 6. We met on the bus ride out there. School bus rides out there. They had dark blue buses they took us out in, So, excuse me, but I didn't know anything about him. He said he was from Chicago, Illinois. I did know that, or he said he was. And so I did a formal report. I can't remember the report number. I thought it was a 1,000, but we found out that wasn't the case. That's different. That's a different report number, because everything's got a form number. And I know I did this because it had to be done with a number 2 Skillcraft pen, and it was in triplicates. So I print really well, and I print real small. And I remember taking a long, long, long time to write down every single thing that I could recollect in my mind. Now, I did not say what I saw out of this side of my window, because there's certain things, when you have a secret or a top secret clearance, you can't at that particular time in 1977, regardless of what was going on out there, whether cattle mutilations or other sightings and so forth, you could not say, well, I happen to see some little guys out here on the outside of my window.
So you didn't tell anyone that?
No.
All right, we're going to take just a quick break, just for just a second, just to say goodbye to everyone over at KGRA Radio. And again, we'll be back with Grant Cameron next week. Thank you over there, and thank you, Bill. But we're going to continue. We're going to go into some of the questions. Again, if you would put those in caps, we're going to be doing that as we move along here. But go ahead and continue if you would.
So that lasted about 3.5 to 4 hours. And that whole debrief. And then Colonel Spraker, once he was satisfied somewhat, and he asked another officer a couple of questions, but not with me being able to hear it, kind of like shielding his mouth and talking over his right shoulder. And over his right shoulder was a gentleman that was in a suit and a hat. He wasn't very tall. And on his right was OSI, an officer, a captain. And then this Richard Doty was a young NCO. He was standing to his right and wearing glasses. I looked right at him and I thought, I've seen you on this base. I guess he was kind of new or something. I don't know. But there were 800 security policemen on Ellsworth Air Force Base at that particular time. And many, many different things happened to a lot of people in all these different areas in these missiles or on these missile sites. But anyway, so from there I was taken to the flight surgeon's office, where there was a doctor, another guy. I don't know if he was another doctor. It was a nurse, OSI, and one other person. There were 5 people there. And the main doc, the other doc, one of them just kind of stood back, and this other doctor, he checked my ears, eyes, nose, throat, pulse, heartbeat, everything, and was talking to me, did the finger thing in front of my eyes, that kind of thing, reflexes, asked me how I felt, and I told him of my incident, in the bathroom, how I felt, and he didn't really comment on that. And at the very end of all of it, he looked at my teeth too. He looked at my teeth and gums. I remember that. And which I thought was weird. And he goes, he said, I need to take a couple of skin samples from you. And I just kind of sat back and I said, because I'm sitting up on his end of this table, and I said, excuse me? He goes, I need to take a skin sample, 2 skin samples. And I said, why? And he goes, well, you're sunburned.
Huh.
I went, what? He goes, your face is burned and your hand is burned. And I looked and I didn't really think about it, but when I tapped my skin like a sunburn, I could feel it. And then I could feel my face. So here on the right side above my eye, he took 1 or 2 pinches of skin, just enough to cause blood to flow, and just put a small Band-Aid on it. And he did the same thing on the back of my right hand. And I never got the results of any of that, and I don't even have the paperwork from the actual examination.
Would you think it was radiation? I mean,
Absolutely.
That's the only thing that would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, you're in the winter in South Dakota. I mean,
yeah.
My first time back to Tampa, Florida, my home, I went to Clearwater Beach and fell asleep and almost got an Article 15 because I got smoked on the beach and had to go to MacDill for help. I got burned up pretty bad, but yeah, that was really strange. And and the weirdest part was, I was married at the time, and I couldn't explain this. And first of all, I'd only been out 1 day, so normally I'd be gone for 3 days and then be off for 3 days. But when I was told I could call my wife, it was right around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, in the evening then, and she thought, "Well, what's going on?" And I said, "Well, I really can't tell you." And I didn't. I mean, because I was told, I signed what I signed as a non-disclosure agreement, that I would not discuss this in any way, that this was classified. And, and as Colonel Spraker says, classified top secret, but I didn't sign any, top secret document. I just signed a letter saying I would not discuss this with anyone, including family or whatever members. I remember that. And I signed it and printed my name and my social security number and my security police badge number, J4292.
So, but you feel comfortable talking about it now?
I don't have a clearance any longer.
I see. It was for clearance. Yeah.
Right. And in 83, when I got out, I went to work for the United States Department of Energy and as a security inspector. And so with the Q clearance, which is above secret, I certainly couldn't talk about it. And I did not. And but I was questioned about it heavily a couple of different times. And it took me 8 months to obtain my first clearance. And then you're brought before a board of 3 to 5 people from the Oak Ridge office, and they in turn try to see what you will talk about.
And so they kind of trick you into things.
Well, they try to see if you'll divulge what you signed saying you would not. And if you do, then that negates your Q clearance, or you're put on a casual type clearance where you can't really do your job because you're under PRP and everything else, a first responder and what have you. So if you give up that, what else would you give up if you had to?
So who's the first person you told about the beings?
I guess a counselor.
Uh-huh.
And that was probably 1997, 98.
Yeah. So all that time you kept it to yourself. That was a long time to keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
Something that.
Yeah, I did have contact with Michael Johnson 2 weeks after the incident. He came to my apartment in Rapid City. How he found out where I live, I don't know.
So what was that like?
Well, it was really interesting because there was a couple of things that was profound, I must say. So he came in and he knocked on my door, and I answered the door, and I opened it. I couldn't believe it was him. I said, "Michael Johnson." I said, "How you doing, man?" He goes, "I had to come find you." And I said, "Well," I said, "I'm glad you did." I said, "I've been wanting to talk to you. I had no idea where you were or how to contact you." And he said somebody had told him where I lived, and which was downtown in Rapid City, Hainesway Apartments. So when he came in, I introduced him to my wife. And I just kind of said, we saw something together, and we haven't seen each other since it happened, and it was traumatic. And she knew it was, because she knew something was going on with me, and I still didn't divulge what it was. But anyway, he went. I put him over by my sofa and a coffee table, and I went to the dining room table, and I said, with paper and pencil, and I said, I want you to draw what you saw, and I'm going to draw what I saw. And we did that.
Good idea.
He saw that craft.
Mm-hmm.
He had it illuminated like I did. And we were very similar in many of the visuals that we both witnessed together that night, even though I thought he was incoherent, but he wasn't. Both of us recollect, and really it wasn't, it was really strange, because we both heard the words in our bodies, do not fear, do not fear.
Really?
Over and over again. And it wasn't as if somebody was talking like you and I are. It was inside my body, in his body too. Do not fear, do not fear. All you can do is fear. You don't know anything but fear, because you can't understand what it is. Anyway, he stayed for about an hour, and we talked about it. And of course, from that point, then I had to, I asked him a question. It's kind of strange. I'm up to that point, I always, I played tennis and I did all kind of stuff, and I still did, but I became so interested in pyramid structures. I don't know how to explain that. I had to draw them and read about them and find out every dadgum thing I could find out about them. Still do to this day. For what reason, I don't know, but there's something I had to find out about. And I still research them today. So I'm kind of like a shoestring archaeologist in my own way, something that I just do. And
they're all over the world. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
We don't know, and it's all in the same 33rd parallel thing. It's crazy. But that whole incident just it never goes away, and it's always there. The other thing that Michael Johnson said, he goes, this just blows me away. He goes, I saw your glove on the floor. And I at that particular point, my ditty bag was, it's a ready bag. It's really large. You can put anything on that thing. You can carry 300 pounds in it if you want to. So it's got all of our cold weather gear in it, our underwear, our all of our toiletries. You just carry everything you have to have for these 3 days out in the field. You literally live out of that bag, all your clothes, everything. And he goes, I saw one of your gloves, meaning my mittens, on the floor. And I said, what floor? What floor, Michael? They're in my bag. He goes, no, on a shiny floor. I saw your mitten on the floor. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, wait a minute. So I ran in my bedroom and I grabbed that ditty bag, which the only thing it was minus was dirty clothes. And I brought it out on the couch where he was sitting, and I just opened it up and I dumped it right there. Everything. All my items were there and accounted for except my right-hand glove. It was gone. And did he see that on the floor? Because I don't know where it went. And a B-52 bomber pilot gave me those gloves. And they were kind of cherished items to me when I first got there. They were cool mittens, I mean, we weren't issued those. They were really special gloves. And that just shocked me that glove was gone, but yet he remembered seeing it on a shiny floor. So
you're thinking it could be a craft, possibly?
Well, or
something like that?
It was left on the floor. And it had a fur back, and it was like yellow kangaroo skin on the three finger side. This finger's free for the operation of your weapon, and you open your trigger guard on your weapon, so you can use your one finger, and they come up to about right here, and they fasten onto your parka. And so they're, you get 50 below zero, you need something. You got to have them,
Yeah.
So that really set me back when he told me that. And then we did that discovery together. And so I got his information, where he lived. his parents' home, and he said Chicago, Illinois. And I had it in my Bible. Of course, I went overseas not long after that. Everything kind of changed concerning the Air Force after that for me. Meaning 8 months later, I got an assignment to Osan Air Base, Korea. I was sent remote, and I could have selected a 2-year tour, which I tried to, and I could have taken her with me, but that wasn't. My commander, Colonel Sprecher, said, "No, you can't do that. You got to go remote," which means by yourself. So that's what I did, and which was okay. It was all right. Supposed to be. And just everything changed. It really did, everything.
So was that a lot of this change happened because of this incident?
Mm-hmm.
And
I did have an incident. I did have you remember when that movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd been hearing about it, and it came out in 1977. I don't know the exact time, but anyway, I went there, and we went together, and that part where Roy Neary's at the mailbox scene after these objects have been seen in the atmosphere, and light power's out and all this stuff. He's sitting by the mailbox and he's got that flashlight in his mouth and he's looking at a map. And it still shakes me up today if I see that. But that light appears in his rear window and it gets extremely bright, as it did that night for us. And it looks as if the atmosphere is being pulled out of that truck, but something else is happening to him. And I don't know what, like he's being maybe shocked mildly or something. I mean, just the expressions of an actor of what he's doing. I mean, there was similarities there, I felt. And mailbox is shaking. I never saw that, but, or anything like that. But just the incident itself, there was some similar stuff to it. And it upset me so much in the theater. I didn't see the ending of it. I got up and left because I was just so upset, and I didn't see it till a later time because of that. And then, of course, I was asked, well, why'd you get so upset? And I really didn't want to go into that with her. So, but it was maybe a year later when I finally saw it. Maybe I think I was in Tampa, Florida or something. I don't even know at that point, but.
Well, Spielberg certainly did a lot of research and talked to a lot of, UFO researchers about encounters. And so we had a lot of things, that were pretty, I want to say accurate, but a lot of things that were accurate to what people have discussed over the years.
Right.
So, I mean, I can see why it would make, that impact. So
it was really something how he centered on Devil's Tower, the shape of Devil's Tower, which could be a pyramid. I don't know if that's similarities there, but I'm telling you that pyramid thing burned into my mind for some reason. I have no idea why or what, but that's never gone away.
Well, you never know. You may be onto something. You never know. So I'm going to pop up a couple of questions here. Do you think it was a MILAB military abduction or extraterrestrial?
Oh, it was extraterrestrial.
Yeah. I mean, by the discussion of what you saw as far as the creatures go, it certainly wouldn't be anything. Would you say the drawing on putting that up, and it'll be in the show notes too, the drawing that you did, would you say that was pretty accurate for like the eyes and
yeah, the heads are a little bit not quite shaped like that. I mean, I'm not a good artist. And
were they flesh tone from what you can remember?
No, they were more bluish than looking back. They had that night gray blue tint to them, if that's the proper word. I tried to capture it there, but it's not quite what I wanted either.
And they were wearing some type of uniform or something, it looked like?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never understand why I see pictures or drawings and these beings have no clothes on. What is that? Who comes up with that? I just don't get that.
Yeah. Well,
they travel a craft across the universe through a wormhole or whatever, and they come here naked. Are you kidding me? No. I'm sorry. Anyway.
Yeah. And how did someone posted a question here, but I'm not going to put it up because of some of the question is a little bit sensitive, but another part of it is, how did your spouse react to disclosing this incident?
I don't think she believed me.
Uh,
I really don't.
mm-hmm.
I don't know if she ever did. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter now.
Okay. Let's see. Here's another question here. Do you know if these facilities would have been equipped with closed circuit cameras back in 1977?
No, they were not.
They were not.
Not
Yeah.
a launch facility. Perhaps Cheyenne Mountain and some of those places were, but not a launch facility. I mean, there were 150 of them, 150 Minuteman missile sites just at Ellsworth alone. And these were remote sites. They had the power to do that, but with the arrays of alarms and sensors and so forth that were, these sites were equipped, but they didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they had the capability, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's spread out so many miles. I think this is a good question from Greg Gardner. Do you feel it's been therapeutic talking about your experience publicly?
You know, a lot of times it affects me in different ways. It's all, to me, it's how much I can, for instance, going to November 5 with Discovery Plus,
Mm-hmm.
I just about passed out standing in front of that site. And really the show, the producers didn't want to get on the site or in front of the site because there's a cattle processing facility on it now, just a metal building, but it's nice looking. You know, the ranchers took over these properties where these facilities were decommissioned, and they were built so well that the rock that they used on the facilities and the fencing are still there. So they put their feed and all kind of stuff there, and it keeps it dry. But standing in that missile site, I felt as if they were going to pop out of the sky right in front of me for some reason. I mean, really, it took me quite a while to gather my thoughts and my feelings and control my emotions to stand on that very spot where I pulled myself up on the truck, on that windowsill of that truck.
Did you ever feel like going back there to check it out while you were on the base afterwards?
I did.
Did you go there? Did you go there, or did you think about it?
No, I went by there several times, but I never went back to November 1. They sent me to Kilo Control, which was the command center for the 68th area. So I was with the supervisor and assistant and flight chief and assistant flight chief at all times from that point on until I left. They never sent me back to November 1. And it's kind of bothered me, you know. I thought, well,
sure.
You know, I felt I was really being checked at all points for everything. And there was an investigator out there from Denver. She was investigating cattle mutilations, Linda Moulton Howe.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I had seen her on the news several times. Now, my partner and I, it was a guy named Mark Wade I worked with, and we had the same initials, and he was a great guy. And I talked to him several times since then, but I don't have contact with him any longer. And we witnessed a cattle mutilation. I think it was at one of the Kilo sites, and it was about a mile from the site itself where we had been camping. We had to camp on the site one night waiting for a maintenance team the next day. And because that's what happened. They couldn't reset an alarm. You stayed there until a maintenance team came out, and a camper alert team would come out and relieve you, and you go back to your launch control facility. And anyway, there were 2 dead cattle. And when we went back by there, we didn't see anything. But when we went past the site, past the corner area where this corral was, there were a bunch of law enforcement officers, some maybe some fire prevention personnel or volunteer fire department, and law enforcement, and they were all, and a couple of veterinarians. They were looking at these cattle that had been mutilated, and it was really strange. We got out and looked at them, and they asked if we saw anything because we told them we were on that missile site all night long, and we told them we didn't see anything. So,
interesting.
Anyway, she was out there, and we were told, it's funny how I guess these base information officers, they pick up on things like this, and they put out these memorandums or whatever they're read at guard mount to us, any of these briefings and so forth before we dispatch into the field as a flight. And they say, if anybody, these things were going on. UFO sightings were happening all the way down into the Badlands. They were happening at Minot. They were happening at Maelstrom. They were happening at Cheyenne or F.E. Warren. You're not to engage any media personnel or anybody like that. Who was that? It was a newspaper from New York. One of those tabloid papers. Esquire.
Esquire.
I don't know if it was that or one that writes up all kind of felonious things about people. I don't know. Anyway, you're not to talk to any reporters, TV reporters looking at any cattle or any sightings or anything like that to anyone. You refer them all to the base information officer. Notify your flight chief and they'll report it to us. So it was well known. It was going on and continued to go on. And of course, I was circumvented by only staying another 8 or 9 months and then left for an overseas base. And I think Ellsworth was decommissioned, and it was at 81. I can't remember now. I don't know. All the missiles, not the base was not decommissioned. Just the missile wing was. So all those missile sites and all those launch control facilities are still there. They're just decommissioned. Yeah.
There's no weapon inside, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that particular night, this incident happened. It was an alarm that something had breached the perimeter,
inner and outer perimeter, which was the antenna array, and another underground alarm, which designated a situation 4, which meant something not only penetrated the alarm array above ground, but something penetrated sensors under the ground.
Jeez. So you all of a sudden, you and Michael, is it Michael? All of a sudden just disappear from there. What do they do? What do they do back at the base? I mean, they got to cover this situation, right? They have to report
That's correct.
What's happening. So what happened after that, after you were missing?
Well, I really don't know. Well, I mean, we were completely out of pocket for the next 5 hours. So they had to send a backup alert team to that site to see what happened. They had to send people looking for us. Now, one of the most fascinating things is that during the Discovery Plus journey out there, a bunch of people came out on the Ormond Road. It looked like an interstate on a dirt road while we were out there filming. They didn't know what was going on. And of course, they had questions, and some people were talking, from the filming people. And but 2 guys kind of hung behind. One was on a 4-wheeler, and the other was in an enclosed like Rhino or something like that. And the guy that was in the enclosed Rhino, he owned like 30,000 acres back there, back toward toward Castle Rock, which is a little bit further north. And then the guy that was on a regular 4-wheeler, he owned a bunch of property, and he was from Newell. Now, he was a deputy sheriff. He was probably 66, 67, my age. But he was a deputy sheriff, a young deputy sheriff in Sturgis, South Dakota, which is about 29 miles south of Newell, South Dakota. So what he told us was that Wing Security Control contacted state officials in Sturgis and Newell to search for us. I never knew any of this. And then this fellow that was in the enclosed Rhino, he said that his father was a state trooper at the time, and he remembers the call that his father got at 2:00 in the morning to come search for us. And his question to whoever he was speaking with back at Ellsworth, then he overheard him. He said, well, why am I going to go look for them? They're equipped better than I am to handle any situation, which we were. So we had these other law enforcement personnel looking for us, plus our own backup alert teams and armed response teams looking for us. So there was 3 security police patrols. That's 6 security police officers, and at least 2 deputy sheriffs and a state patrolman looking for us all at the same time. Now, the state trooper, this guy told, and we've got his name and so forth, he told whoever he reported to at Ellsworth that he saw some strange lights in the sky. He didn't expound on any of that. And that's what this fellow told us, that his father saw some strange lights in the sky, and he reported it to the people at Ellsworth. I don't know if anything was ever on radar. I never was privy to any of that. So I really honestly don't know. And I never knew those people were looking for us too until I went out there with Discovery Plus people.
Wow, that's something. Now, I'm sure that they were on the radio with you that entire time, trying to be, and you were most likely both unconscious or at least not reactionary to what was going on. So the question here in chat, I'm going to kind of expand on a little bit. They're asking if your clothing was put on weird after the event, and what they're getting at was there any type of signs of disruption, like you may have been taken in any type of way, like clothing or anything else? I know you mentioned the glove, but was there anything else that made you suspicious when you thought about it later?
Well, I have 2 marks on my body, both on the left side of my body, and don't know where they came from. I never remember any injuries there or anything like that. And one is under my left arm here, under here. I've got pictures of it close up. It's a scoop mark. And then on my inner left ankle, in the same area behind my ankle bone, which have been looked at. And I asked a few doctors that I know, and one that I go to, had he ever, what would these be in a medical emergency, which I've never really had. I never had an emergency, being in an accident or car accident or something like that, where I was transported by ambulance or anything like that. But he said there was no known medical procedure that he could think of why anyone, or why these areas would be penetrated with anything to either draw blood or whatever they were meant to do. He said that made no sense whatsoever. But they're identical to each other. I mean, in close-up photography, which we've done, which is really, I've got pictures of it. I can send
that right there, right? I just found this.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was the mark. And how soon afterwards did you discover this?
I don't know, maybe a year and a half. I never knew it. And then the one on the inside of my ankle, I don't, looks exactly like that. It's crazy.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So someone wanted to know here, would you be interested in hypnotherapy to help remember the incident? Have you thought about that regression?
Yes, I've done that twice.
You have done it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And how did that go?
Well, actually the first time, a very creditable MUFON hypnotist, investigator, hypnotized me. And I know during the hypnosis, I really got kind of away from myself or something. I don't know, but I remember several things that I'd never seen before or knew before. And it put me in AFib. And
oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I had to go get the shocks, and I went in AFib again a week later. And it was funny because, or it wasn't funny, but for about 3 weeks, I sleep in this room because I work shift work, and so I don't disturb anybody else. And I just kept feeling like there was a presence around me or something that I felt back at November 5. And I really can't explain that, but I've had that several times. But my hours that I wake up at night are just really, really strange. So like 1:11, 3:10, 3:11, 4:11.
Oh, like consistently?
Yes. I've got a dream log about 4 inches thick. And, you know, I mean, apocalyptic stuff, you know, like tidal waves, nuclear explosions, famine, just really, you know, not fun stuff. Wake you up sweating, you know, you think, wow, this can't happen. You know, I don't know how to stop that.
Well, here's kind of a question related. Have you ever worked on dealing with resolving the trauma? Because you deserve to. Yeah, I mean, this sounds like PTSD. I don't know, through counseling. I
Yeah,
guess.
that's been mentioned to me several times, but I really don't know how to follow up on that. I associate PTSD with a wartime act or something that you see or feel. I guess you can get it at any time, and this
Right.
would have definitely been an early onset of that. Uh,
Hmm.
because I'm definitely a guarded person, and
Hmm.
in every way, I just have to be. I mean, really, I just have to be. And there's nothing. The thing about it, there's nothing you can do to stop these beings. There's not one thing you can do, and you hope that if they ever show themselves again, that you can withstand it, that you can look at them, instead of flipping out or losing your
Mm.
mind. I guess I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
I,
like using the word I don't know, but in this case, I really don't know.
yeah. Well, I can't even imagine what is that like. Have you met other people that are saying they're abductees or
Yeah,
experiencers, as they say?
I have, and I've talked with two of them, and they're some pretty credible people, and they've got a lot of resume behind them in in this field.
Hmm. Hmm. And have you ever? This is another question from Electric Jellyfish. I like that one. Um,
That's
have you ever
cool.
thought of? Yeah. Have you ever thought of writing a book?
Yes, I have. I've got a friend that's been writing books, and he's really really good at it. And I'm going to see if I can tap him up for maybe showing me how. Or, I mean, I've got enough notes probably to put together for it because I do take a lot of notes and I do write a lot to myself or like a journal kind of entry,
Hmm.
thing. But my sister said the same thing. She said I should write a book, but I'm just
It seems like it would be very interesting for a lot of people. Do you know if there's another question here? Do you know if the nearby airbase caught anything on radar? Did anyone catch anything on radar when this was happening that you're aware of?
I'm not aware of it, but Rapid City Airport was actually closer than Ellsworth Air Force Base. Um, so I don't know if either did, and I didn't even know to ask, and I was too afraid to ask, to be honest with you, because
Hmm.
you have to realize, it's a whole lot different for an airman or an NCO to have an incident and to talk about it versus an officer,
Hmm.
and meaning that an officer usually has uh, a different higher chain of command uh, to discuss things with. And, like a launch control officer sitting underground, when all 10 of his missiles go offline, well, it's not
Hmm.
only known by him, it's known by everybody that monitors the capability of our nuclear weapon arsenal. I mean, it's just not confined to them. Everybody knows about it, you know.
Yeah.
And so everything transpires from that. Many reports are generated just from that one incident there. But for something like what happened to us, I think that they really honestly don't know how to approach it and don't want to acknowledge it and say it never happened or it can't happen or we don't understand it, so it can't happen. So don't talk about it or you will be in trouble. You're still going overseas no matter what you do. And that's the way it just pans out. Unfortunately, it all rolls downhill, right?
Right. And now as of this year, with the new bill that was signed, there's going to be an investigation of these type of situations all the way back to 1945. So this is something I hope that they do take a look at. This particular situation and the other, like Maelstrom Air Base and other, when there was interference with nukes, because
Mhm.
this is these weren't nukes. They were, what were they? What were these missiles?
Nukes.
Oh, they were nukes. Okay.
Yeah, these are
They were
Minuteman
nukes.
nuclear
Okay.
missiles. Yeah,
Minuteman nukes. Yeah, that's what.
1.2 megatons each. Yes.
Yeah, nasty little things. So yeah, so there was interference with these nukes. I think, I mean, if that's not national security, what is? I mean, this should
you
be
know,
investigated.
yeah. And you and I discussed before, a lot of people talk about, well, they shut this down. They shut these sites down. They shut these missiles off, right? And then all of a sudden
Hmm.
they came back on. Well, it wasn't always like that. There were times I think they have fun with us. I think they like to see what we do. I mean,
Hmm.
I really think they have a sense of humor in some way. They have to have. Look at
You're
our,
not the
look at
first one that said that. I've
look at
heard
what's
people
on
say
our
that.
TVs.
Yeah.
They got to laugh at that. But yeah, but the other thing is, it really gets me. What I it used to blow me away was to get dispatched to a missile site, whether it be November or Oscar or Echo, any place that you worked. All of a sudden, because I did vacation relief also, and but everybody knew about this. A missile starts to cycle itself to launch out of the blue, not turn itself off, but cycle to launch. Start going through the launch sequence on their on their comm boards underground. So they call in a panic. Oh, we need you to do something. So they're trying to think of things for you to stop this rocket, in case it does launch. Now the nuclear part couldn't function. They haven't been armed, wouldn't be armed. But
that wouldn't matter to someone seeing a missile coming, would it?
yeah, it wouldn't matter. But
Yeah.
the thing about it is, so what's the immediate thing that we can do to stop this, prevent this from happening? First thing, jump in your vehicle with your partner, haul buggy out to this missile site, literally drive up onto the blast door, which is a 13-ton concrete octagon-shaped door with a cattle trail at one end of it, and it blows it off on rails if it goes. There's about, I don't know how many hundreds of pounds of explosives there are in that door to blow it off, but it's immediate. When that door blows, that missile goes. It's just that fast. There's no hesitation. But anyway, in hopes that you put your vehicle, a 1.5-ton vehicle, on top of that door, you face it in the direction of the cattle trail, put it in neutral, get your stuff and run off that site and get a mile away from it. That's a standard SOP. Get a mile away from it and watch. Now, if it launches, that door's going to blow off, and hopefully that vehicle will fall down on top of that missile before it launches, and it'll mess up the gyro and it'll cause it to go off and just crash in the prairie somewhere.
That's crazy. How close did one get to launching?
I really don't know, but I mean, that was what we used to have to do when they did it. And of course, they didn't launch. So then we were told, all clear, go back and get your vehicle and get off the site. And we all go, that didn't go.
What was the investigation? What did they come up with for an investigation of why this happened?
We were never told. The only ICBM that ever flew literally out of one of the launch facilities was that November 2. And that was a test sequence. I think it flew for 5 seconds before they detonated it. Blew it up conventionally. It was not armed. It was just a test to see that they would fly.
Yeah. Wow, boy, this is really something. Let's see. I think this is actually a good question. Now, I know this was 1977, but were you really thirsty immediately after the situation? Do you happen to remember?
Say that again.
You remember that? Yeah.
Was he asked if I was really thirsty? I'm telling you, man, I could have drank Newell Lake dry, and I'm not kidding you. He just asked if I was thirsty after my abduction. Yeah.
Right. And I'm wondering what is related to where he came up with that, and because I've never heard of anyone talk about that.
I've never been asked that before.
Yeah. I remember I asked Travis Walton if it was 4 days, where did you go to the bathroom? I asked him, what did he use for bathroom facilities? If he remembered any of that. And he doesn't remember any of that. But this has been a real pleasure. Let me just see if there's anything else we got going here. Let's see. Given all that you've been through, would you voluntarily go through another event like 1977? I think you said that was horrifying. You really wouldn't, right? I mean, this is nothing you're really interested in.
I think that if the opportunity, well, I don't know if it'd be an opportunity or not, but if they come for you, there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. So I would try to go through it with more understanding. I would try to keep my composure and try to keep a logical head about me. I don't know if I could ever, you'd like to think that that you could stick your hand out and say, how you doing? Like they did in Close Encounter, whatever that was, but I don't know if you can. I mean, you're talking about a completely different species from somewhere far off in the universe, or light years away. I don't know. And maybe they've been here for many, many thousands of years under the sea, under the ground. Who knows? They can do anything they want to do. I don't
It
think
seems
that,
like I hear that kind of narration quite a bit lately.
yeah.
That maybe they've been here for a long time. I had someone from former CIA on recently who kind of said the same thing, and it seems like I'm hearing that more and more these days. And let's see, it's related to the time dilation between different reference frames? I'm not really sure what that's not really a question, but here's I'm just going to pop up a couple more questions here and then we'll call it a night. Do you think you could have overpowered them physically if they didn't knock you out? I mean, would you even dare to try?
I want to say this. If in that situation, when I was standing at November 5, when I was just out there last year, I mean, I did not know whether to run, and I was armed, heavily armed, shoot at them. And I said this on live TV, or mess myself. Because you're literally in that state of mind to where you're the rabbit behind the bush in the middle of the desert, and there's only one bush and you're behind it. And the worst, biggest, baddest hunter that you could ever think of is on the other side of that bush looking at you, knowing you're there. Right. I don't know if I could overpower them. I mean, I guess physically I could. I think, but who knows? Maybe they don't need muscle. Maybe they use their mind to do whatever they want. Maybe they can manipulate you, me, anybody as they want to. You don't think anybody could, but we don't know their capabilities.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I kind of agree with you there. It seems to me that they could do about anything they wanted to, in my opinion, from what, I've heard people have talked about over the years. It just seems like where they're on a different level, and we can't even imagine the level that they're on. But this one last question here just popped up. Are you familiar with the Berkshire's UFO incident? Did you look into that?
I've heard of it. I've heard of the Berkshire. That's up in is that New York, north of New York?
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts.
Yeah.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. It's where did that come from? It's quite interesting, and it's on Netflix. Unsolved Mysteries season or so ago. But it's really quite they did a really good job with it, and a lot of people knew it as the Tom Reed abduction, family abduction, and there's a monument and all that.
Yeah, I do know about that.
Yeah,
I was also
so many people. Yeah,
I was also amazed that Graham Hancock's what is it? Ancient, not ancient archaeology. He just did that on Netflix. Not ancient archaeology, but ancient apocalypse. I think is what he said. What it was, and it's phenomenal. Some of the stuff that he's gotten and how they've dated some of these things. Again, archaeology is just telling so much, and for everything that's there, it's only about 6% of what exists. So that just blows my mind. I mean, the Sahara Desert in Egypt wasn't even there 12,000 years ago. It was a lush.
Well, they have no way to date unless they find something that was contemporary with whatever it is they find. You can't date stone. You can do all kinds of things with pottery and wood, and you can date all that stuff. But when it comes to stone, you can't date when it was shaped and formed and moved, and the stone itself is millions of years old, so they can't date those times. But anyway, a fascinating conversation, Mario. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, and I like our talks even when we're not talking on the radio. It's always fun to talk to you. So you take care.
You too, and thank you again.
All right, thanks. All right, everyone. So thank you so much. I'll be back next week with Grant Cameron. And what did I see? Someone sent me this. I thought it was kind of funny. Keep looking and keep watching the skies. Well, that's similar to what I say So keep your eyes to the sky, and we'll see you next week at the same time.